next item, reports from staff. And A is city council report.
We are a month into our fiscal year, basically. We are point out one thing, and Elton may have some stuff to add, but today we received an email from our city treasurer regarding our CDs, and next month, or actually in September, it looks like we have a 24-month CD at High Plains Bank that is coming up for maturity, and Trent will be probably next month asking us if we want to reinvest that back into another CD or if we want to do something different with it. The amount of that is $57,496.52. It is presently at a 3.07% interest rate, and that's probably the highest, if not the highest, one of the highest interest rates we've had with our CDs lately.
And it will not likely be that
It
high.
will not be that, probably be that high moving forward. But if we reinvested into another CD, the longer the term that we specify, the higher the interest rate would be. And generally our penalties, generally we don't experience penalties if we were to ever have to cash one in early. But that's not to say that we wouldn't, but generally Trent's been treasurer for quite a while now, and he doesn't ever recall having had a penalty for cashing a CD in early. So anyway, that's something that as a board we might want to think about a little bit before our next meeting. We'll meet as an airport board before the finance committee will meet with Trent again the next time to discuss that particular CD. So if you have thoughts on that, maybe we can have a discussion at the next board meeting on it, airport board meeting on it.
I do have a couple things. When we were discussing the PAPI lights last month, we talked about how the issues with those were a result of a lightning strike. I contacted our insurance company. Right now, I think today we spent about $1,500 on those.
About $1,100.
$1,100. We have a $2,500 deductible. But we do have, I have it here, up to $100,000 a year on our lights outside of, on the property of the airport. I know Greg's been still experiencing some issues with those lights, and so it may be worthwhile to go ahead and file that claim and start that process, even though we may or may not get to that deductible amount. But if we continue to have issues, it would at least give us some coverage back on that. So I wanted to talk to Greg a little bit. I know he was having some more issues today, and so I need to talk to him tonight. But I told OMAG that I wouldn't be likely calling her back tomorrow, and we probably would look at starting that claim. It can't hurt us any. We're already spending that money anyway. And if we get $2,500, it may just be money that we can get back then from the insurance. And then the only other thing is, Greg may touch on in his report, we're looking for part-time help again. We'll be putting that job up on the website tomorrow. We no longer have our part-time helper out here. So, but that's all I have.
One question I have. Would it be appropriate that the balance that we want the city and the cash investment balances? Because basically it is a loan. We have an interest on it.
I mean, we can instead of being full cash, it can really just be stated loan. I can do that.
I just thought it was a way to keep track of that and everybody know where it is. And since it is our funds, it gives a total account of everything.
I guess one more thing I will add on that line is as far as looking for a loan to pay back the airport, we talked about recommendation of our accounting associates, since it is the end of our fiscal year, they recommended that we go ahead and get them all of our information, look at where our balances sit officially at the end of the year after they make their adjustments, before we move forward with looking at a loan, because depending on how things have progressed throughout the year, it may depend on what we want to do as a finance committee. So just to give you a heads up on that, we kind of put that on hold for right now until we have a better understanding of where we're at. So we can borrow the appropriate amount.
Angelica, on the job posting, if you want to send that up to the school, and you can put it on the career services page, have that available. I don't know.
I'll give it to you at the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other item? City Council report? If not, we'll go on to item B, manager's report.
Okay, we'll start off with the fuel report. Last month was pretty slow once again. Sold 1,306.8 gallons off the gas pump for $4,626.75. Sold 221.7 off the avgas truck for $817.92. So our total gallons, 100 low lead, were 1,527.9 gallons at 5,444.67. Jet A, we sold 210 over wing, 177 single point for a total of 387 gallons of Jet A for 1,277.10, excuse me. Total fuel sales last month at 6,721.77. Sold quite a bit of oil. Sold a couple of cases and some individual quarts for $277.91. Total tax on that oil was $25.69. We did have 4 transient aircraft spend the night for $60. So our total sales last month were $7,085.37. I did include some stat sheets. Went clear back from March through the end of July. The only thing that I did not include on your weekend stat sheets was I initially did it all just full weekends, and actually March the 1st was on a Sunday. So I included that, and there were 4 total sales on that Sunday. So that moved our Sunday sales up. Your guys' sheets are showing 39, and it was actually 43 if you include Sunday, March the 1st. And then our total sales Saturday, and then I broke it down Monday through Friday sales. Just wanted to kind of go over that so you guys have an idea how it's kind of, since the pandemic, how it just seems like there's been a decrease in sales every month. So, as Angelica said, the part-timer was released. Hopefully we'll be posting for that here in the very near future. Out here it's been mowing. Home I mow about every 5 days. Take a good 5 days to mow out here if you had 2 people mowing all the time. But doing what we can on trying to get it mowed. Tomorrow the market trend for jet fuel will be out. I'm going to look at that. I'm going to have to go ahead and order some jet fuel. Our supplier has a new policy. If you don't move that jet fuel within 6 months now, they can consider it bad, make us get rid of it. So I'm just going to look, since our sales, especially on turbines, have been down so much, I think we'll probably just go with 4,000 gallon on a half load probably this time. So I'll try to get that ordered tomorrow. And then my last thing is Toby was out here, I believe, like it'll be 2 weeks this coming week or 3. We went down to the new hangars and kind of looked over down there the drainage problem, and in reference to the boring machine that will be out here for the Odals project, so Toby can touch on that if he doesn't mind.
So my understanding is that maybe somebody had an idea that it looks like a solution to the drainage issue would be to install an inlet on the south side of that tank. And I guess there was an idea that perhaps while the contractor is boring under Harper Road for the cables for the Odals, that they could come down and bore under the taxiway in order to put a drainage pipe. My concern with the idea is that the type of boring equipment that they will use for the Odals project is they'll simply be boring a 2-inch PVC conduit, whereas, I mean, we haven't run any kind of hydraulic calculations, but I would anticipate we would need a minimum of a 12-inch drainage pipe, possibly more. So I don't know that the same type of equipment would necessarily be able to just simply move down there and do that. The other piece of that is we would need to have some sort of design, some hydraulic grades to determine the depth of the pipe, not only the depth, but the size of the pipe, and then kind of some grades for a contractor to dig that out to the ditch. It looks like, we don't have any survey information up there yet, but it looks like rather than going south and trying to ditch drain it, I think it would be better to go under the hangar apron to the west, and I think we've got more fall, we could chase that ditch out to get it into the existing ditch a little bit easier. So I don't know that that's something that's going to be easily doable with the same contractor that would be doing the lighting project, simply because of, it's a very, very small bore that we'll put under Harper Road.
Sorry, okay.
And that's all I have. We did go down and look at it, and just kind of a mess down there.
I think a drainage structure of some sort is going to be the solution. I don't think there's any other way to get around that to stop the flooding eventually.
And that's all I have tonight, so.
Okay, any questions of the airport manager? If not, we'll go on to the next item, item 5. Discussion and action on amendment number 2, owner-engineer agreement with CDC Corporation.
And Toby, I'll probably let you talk about this, but I just wanted to point out, so Toby had talked to me after our last meeting and asked me about this amendment and why hadn't we signed this yet. I received this back in March in the middle of COVID and everything and didn't realize that it was there. So thankfully he's keeping us on task, but it's an amendment to our owner-engineer agreement for the Odals project. I'm going to let you just visit a little bit more about what that is anticipated for.
The bore under Harper Road, we anticipated that we would encounter several utilities along that road, but we did not know how many. We need to know the depth of those utilities in order to design the depth of the bore to get underneath all of them. The way to go about doing that is to use hydro excavation. They popple those lines and then they give us a report as to the depth, and we can get the bore underneath it. Until we had the field survey, the original field survey back, we did not know how many utilities there were up there, and therefore we couldn't get a price from the hydro excavation subconsultant to go do that work. So once we got the field survey back, we then engaged them to come and do the hydro excavation. That's already been done. That was part of the design. We just went ahead and did it. But this amendment covers the cost of that hydro excavation work, and that was something that it was actually before Angelica was business manager. We talked to Joe Don. We knew that would be something that we would add, so that was not an unexpected item. It was just something we weren't able to cost until we had the field survey.
So that amendment is $2,375.
Any questions?
Make a motion to approve amendment number 2, the owner-engineer agreement with CDC Corporation.
Have a motion, any discussion? Not to have a second.
I'll second.
Motion and second to approve. Call the roll, please.
Parker,
Yes.
Mossberg,
Yes.
item number 6, discussion and action on amendment number 3 of owner engineer agreement with CEC Corporation.
I'll let you take that one.
All right. So this amendment is for the construction services that CEC will provide as part of the apron expansion project, the project that was designed originally by Garber. The scope of services includes bidding services, the FAA grant administration for fiscal year 20, construction administration, on-site construction inspection, and then the FAA required construction materials testing. One of the things that visited with Angelica when we were setting this up, CEC, we typically try to do a lump sum agreement where every service we provide, the cost is exactly known up front. That's how the Ovals project, that's how we have that set up. I feel that Garber has potentially given the contractor more time than what they need in the project. They've given them 120 calendar days. We typically set our contract time as working days rather than calendar days. And so what we've done, rather than attempt to set a lump sum for that 120 days, we've set it up on a day rate where we are only billing for the inspector on the days that the contractor is working. I feel like I've worked with one of these contractors on 7 or 8 projects now. The other one I have not worked with, but I know of them. I think they will get done more quickly than the 120 calendar days. And so by setting this up on a day rate basis, you're not paying them necessarily a lump sum fee for inspection that we don't end up using. So all of the services are in there as a lump sum except for the inspection, and that one is set up as a day rate. All of these costs will be included in the FAA grant application, and in fiscal year 20, all of the FAA grants are funded at 100%. So this will all come out of that FAA.
My only question when I was looking at that was just to make sure there wasn't anything we'd already paid Garber for those items.
No, actually, we actually received our final bill from Garber. I think there was a 5% amount left on their plan layout engineering cost there. And we got that bill. That's the only thing that we had left due then, and so we've taken care of that. It shouldn't, from what I can tell, I mean, I don't see that there's anything that we've already paid for. They did the design work, and this is basically from the bid going forward. So
Bidding services was the first piece that we
Yes.
picked up, and their contract actually specifically excludes
the
bidding
bid,
services.
yeah.
One, unrelated to this, as you know, they prepared one bid package, but then they've also designed additional phases that I think are not, the funding won't be available until 2024. In order to ensure that we don't have to redo anything between now and 2024, the city needs to get possession of the CAD files for that. And so if it's okay with you, I will send Sean with Garber an email and copy you and just request that they send you the CAD files, because between now and 2024, something is going to change with the project. There will be some FAA standard that changes, and if all we have is a PDF of those plans, we don't have the ability to modify that on your behalf. And so I think that's important that you have the CAD files since you've already paid for this.
Yeah, that would be great.
Any other discussion? We'll call for a motion then on item 6.
Move we approve amendment number 3 of the owner engineer agreement with CEC Corporation.
Any discussion? No? I'll ask for a second. We have a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Parker,
Yes.
Osborne,
Yes.
Lawson,
Yes.
Turner.
Go on to item 7, discussion and action on bid opening for the apron expansion project phase 1.
I'm going to let you take that as well.
All right. We opened bids today at 2 o'clock for the apron expansion, and we received 2 bids, one from Contact Incorporated out of Broken Arrow and one from GCC Enterprises out of Dallas. In the handout that Angelica gave you when you arrived, there is a detailed tabulation of bids that shows the cost for both the base bid, alternate number 1, and then the combination of both of those. Kind of got an interesting situation in that the low bidder for the base bid is Contec, but when you consider the base bid plus the alternate, the low bidder actually changes to GCC by $125. So next we need to discuss kind of the financial status and what it would look like to award either of those bids. And rather than, we were unable to provide you with a recommendation to award yet because we need to talk about the financial side of it. I reviewed the bid proposals for both. They both appeared to be valid and complete. They had everything that Garber asked for in their proposal packet, so I do believe both of them to be valid, acceptable bids. But if you look at, there's a document called Project Financial Summary that Angelica handed out. And the total project cost, if we just awarded the base bid, if we awarded it to Contec, the total project cost would be $630,110. Does everybody see that on that page? You currently have $663,332 available from the FAA. So the base bid could be awarded to Contec, who was a low bidder of the base bid, within the FAA grant funds available. If we move down to the next section and we look at the total project that considers both the base bid and alternate number one, you can see that if that were awarded, I'm going to move over into GCC's column because in that combination, GCC becomes the low bidder. We would need $714,594. The amount of the FAA funds available does not change. And therefore, if we wanted to award the base bid plus the alternate, the city would need to come up with $51,262. That's essentially the overage between the total project cost and the FAA funds currently available. So that would be one option, is the city decides that you have that money available somewhere in the budget, and you decide up front that the city is just going to pay that overage amount out of city funds. And as a reminder, this year the FAA grant is 100%. So FAA normally will pay for 100% of the eligible expenses up to the amount of funding that you have available. Something to potentially consider is if you look at the differential between the FAA funds available and the base bid, where Contec is low, there's about $33,000 of FAA funds unused. What I did is I looked at the unit prices that Contec bid for the alternate work, which is the patching. And within the FAA funds available, this is not on your sheet, but within the FAA funds available, we could award approximately 60% of the patching that was originally planned in the alternate. So we could, if that's the direction you wanted to go, we could award the bid and award a change order to that contract at the same council meeting, reducing the quantity of the alternate down so that the total project cost remains within the FAA funding available. And if we did that, we could complete approximately 60% of the patching. A potential strategy that we can look at is the FAA can allow the amendment of a grant up to 15%. So if we were to award the base bid and we were to award enough quantity in the alternate to get us up to 100% of the FAA funding available, and then come back to the FAA once the new fiscal year starts, we could approach them and say, hey, we would like to do this additional work. It's within the scope of the project. We would like to request an amendment to our grant to cover this additional work, which would essentially be the quantity that was not originally awarded. And the FAA, it's up to their discretion, but they could award that grant amendment to do that work. And again, they can amend up to 15% of the grant amount. It looks like if we were to take that approach, we would need about a 13% amendment to the original grant. So that would be a potential strategy to, number one, award everything that we can within the FAA funds available, which would not be all of the patching, And then if you decide that you want to go ahead and pursue all of the patching, we could go back to FAA next fiscal year. It's possible that we were underrun some of the other quantities in the contract. I know when we design a job, we typically pad some of the quantities, so there's a little bit of contingency. I don't know exactly, I have not done a quantity takeoff off the garbage plans to see how much, if any, they have in there. But that would be a potential strategy to get that work done without the city having to come up with that $51,000.
Going back to the FAA is not a guarantee.
Not a guarantee at all, no. But the risk to the city between the two approaches is $125. If you award the alternate now in its entirety, which would be over and above the FAA grant funds available, the FAA cannot come back and amend the grant to cover that known overage upfront. So if we were to only award the contract within the funds available, and then go back and ask the FAA, can we have this additional quantity? They could say no, and it'd be $125, it costs $125 more than if we awarded the base bid and the alternate upfront. So that's really the decision that has to be made.
So if you have a little bit of time to review this, would you give us your opinion of what the recommendation is for you, from your company, what the least risk and the most amount of patching we can get done? I think that the patching is important, considering the size of those cracks out there. Can we get that done as soon as possible?
So the difference in the worst case scenario, let's say you awarded the base bid to Contact and you awarded a portion of the alternate to get us up to the total FAA funds available. And so at that point, the grant application would be for 100% FAA funding. There would be no city match in that initial grant. And that would cover approximately 60% of the patching. If we go back to the FAA and they, next fiscal year, we ask them, will you amend our grant to cover the difference, what we would need to do the rest of the patching? If they say yes, great. Then the only one caveat to that is the amendment may be a 90-10 split and not 100% money. It depends on what Congress does. But again, that would be a very small amount to the city. Worst case scenario, they say, no, we will not amend the grant, and you want to proceed with that patching. It will cost exactly $125 more to the city than if you awarded it all up front to GCC. Because if we award it all to GCC, we are guaranteed the city will have to come up with the $51,000 and change, and the FAA can't amend that in the future. So I mean, that's really a call for you guys, but for $125, I mean,
Because whether we get an amendment from the FAA, if we do 100% of the patchwork that's in that alternate, it's still going to cost $51,000 and change. And I say get as much done as we can with the FAA funds available. October 1st is the fiscal year.
correct.
October 1st, go back and ask them to give us the rest of the money for the additional patchwork.
Well, as far as timing,
Is that,
and we can do some of that before it actually starts. We can do a quantity takeoff. What I would like to know is there any contingency anywhere else in the quantities, because that number may get small. We may have, if there's contingency elsewhere in the base bid that is unused, those funds can be used towards patching quantity.
So you're saying not wait, or wait till the project is closer to being done so we can see?
At least under construction, I don't think we could go to the FAA October 1 if we haven't at least started construction. I think we need to do, we can go ahead on our end and do a quantity takeoff and see exactly see if there's any contingency in there. But I think now, I think our recommendation would be to try to get as much done within the FAA funds available. And so by doing that, we would need to award the base bid and the alternate to Contact subject to also awarding a change order to them at the same council meeting, reducing the alternate quantity to get it into budget. And that does, I checked on that, and if you, trying to figure out the way to say this, they would still be the low bidder. If we reduce that quantity to the maximum amount of FAA funding available, they would still be the apparent low bidder. That would not change. The quantity where it breaks over for GCC becomes a low bidder is higher than what that threshold would be. If that makes sense.
So minimum, we'd have 60% of the passage out of grant funds.
Correct.
And the ability to potentially go back and ask for more,
Right.
To finish out the
to finish out.
Right, I just want to make sure everybody understands that that is not a guarantee that they would amend it. We can certainly ask them. I have seen them do that on other projects before, but
But if there's contingency in the base bid, it's still good.
if there's, yeah, that grant amount, it's all eligible work, and that grant amount is fixed. So, and I'm just making up numbers, but, you know, if we are able to save $5,000 in the base bid because there was contingency in the quantity, we can apply that $5,000 towards all the work. That, there's no problem.
Angelica, if they didn't approve the additional grant funds, what does it look like from a financial standpoint?
From a financial standpoint, I do believe, you know, we're not talking $200,000, we're talking about $50,000, which is a lot of money. I'm not saying it's not, but it's a smaller amount. As how things have gone last month and how we're looking to go at the beginning of this month, I feel like we can handle that $50,000 from a financial standpoint if we absolutely had to. You know what I'm saying, Bill? It's not budgeted as part of the airport budget. It's not currently part of our airport budget. We would have to make a budget amendment for it. However, as far as financial cash flow, I feel like we can probably accommodate that.
And that's not something that you would actually have to make that decision right now. We could apply for up to 100% of the FAA grant funds and award the contract based on that, and then we can wait for the next meeting or the meeting once we're under construction and see if that financial picture has changed. And
So we could wait.
right, you would basically, we'd be handling 60% of the patching, we would know that up front, and then depending on, you guys could always decide whether to do a change order to award the rest of the patching and apply for that FAA amendment, or you could say, we're just going to stop it.
But at that point in time, we would have to make the decision, we're gonna apply for the FAA funding, knowing we may not get it, but we're making that commitment, so we have to, basically, we have to know the cash position.
We could ask FAA, and I don't know all the timing of how that all works, but we could ask the FAA, I don't think we want to ask them before we apply for the initial grant, hey, will you give us an amendment later?
Right, no, I agree.
But I think that once the grant has been awarded, I think at that point in time, as we're about to start construction, we can go to FAA and say, hey, we got this other patching, would you be agreeable? We understand you may not be able to amend the grant until, later in the fiscal year, but would you agree to support that? And then based on their response, we could make the decision.
So we don't have to make the decision and commit the funds either way. We could wait and see what FAA
Right.
says and then make that decision.
The thing we really need to do right now, tonight, is we need to prepare the FAA grant application. And so we just need some guidance on the direction you want to go. Do you just want to award the base bid, go on down the road, award the base bid plus the alternate in whole to GCC, knowing that you're going to pay $51,000, or do we want to award the base bid and a portion of the alternate to contact up to that 100% of the FAA funds available? That's really what we're asking.
But I don't think it makes any sense to award the whole thing, knowing that it's absolutely going to be out of our pocket for the rest of it. How would we word that motion? Would it be acceptable to say, award the base bid plus, alternate one with a change order?
I can even give you
You got some language for me?
total amount here.
We can award the base bid, next meeting we can award the
change order for alternate one.
change over the alternate.
Well, if we're going
I don't
to,
think I understand it that way.
I don't think, as part of the FAA grant application, we're going to need to show them what you plan to award. And so, I think we need to nail that down as far as, what I think we could do is, the difference in the FAA funds available and the total project for the base bid only is $33,222. So maybe a way that you could word that is move to award the base bid plus $33,222 of the alternate number one work to keep the total project within the FAA grant funds available. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
Before we make a motion, as far as contacting the two companies, you had dealings with them before, I mean, how?
So we've done either 7 or 8 airport concrete paving projects with Contact. And this year, we already have them at the Guthrie Airport and at the Alva Airport on 2 other projects. They just finished this week a job at Chickasha for us, and they will also finish by the end of this week a job up in Hooker that they've done with us. So I don't have any issues. And that certainly, I know of no issues with GCC. I personally have never done a project with them, but I know that they did a lot of airport work and they have won a lot of airport work for other engineers. They've just been second low bidder on several of ours a couple different times. So that's certainly not a slide against them either. I think either company could perform the work.
Okay.
Any more questions?
So GCC would be the lowest for the base plus the alternate,
Plus the alternate in its entirety, yes.
and Contact is the lowest for the base plus the 60% of the alternate.
Correct. They still, how do we word this? So if we define a maximum contract value that we were able to award to remain within the FAA funds, the maximum contract value would be the same for either contract.
Right.
We would accomplish more work inside of Contact's contract at that maximum value. There would be more quantity that we could complete than if we awarded that same maximum amount to GCC.
Okay.
There is a breakover point, but that breakover point is above the...
663,000.
Correct.
All right, we'll take a stab at this.
$145 difference. With the base plus the alternate.
I move to accept the base bid plus alternate number 1 up to FAA funds available, a total of $663,332 to Contact. I said that in my head. I didn't hear it.
Well done.
Comments? Not motion, or a second, rather?
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Parker,
Yes.
Mossberg,
Yes.
Turner,
Yes.
Logston.
Yes. Let's see, we go on to item number 8. Remarks and inquiries by airport commission members. Greg, just having to think, what did they do to the gas truck that was $733?
points, plugs, rebuilt the carburetor, rotor. He said that the plugs were, a lot of them had the electrodes totally burned off of them, and I don't think it's ever been cleaned up. The reason you've been seeing him out here, they're trying, since they did it, he ain't been charging me the last couple of times, they're trying to get the, since it's got the high idle, it's got two different adjustments, he's trying to get it
Okay.
all balanced out. So,
I'm just curious. That's
yeah, basically a good tune-up with the carburetor rebuild. So,
Okay, it just been a long time since I did automotive work. It seemed like a lot of money for
yeah.
carburetor rebuild. Anything else from the airport board members? If not, we'll go on next item, remarks and inquiries by citizens. Nope. Then we'll adjourn.
And